Welcome back. This is our teaching at the time of the end, and I will try to get to our scripture today of Revelation chapter 12, starting at verse 1. Before I do, I want to speak a little more, as I have been speaking in the last three messages, to what's happening right now. Now, Revelation 12, verses especially 1 through 6, do speak of the things that are happening right now, but for those of you watching, I want you to hear what I'm saying. Number one, prepare to meet the Lord. Prepare to meet the Lord. Because one of the judgments of the last days are plagues. Plagues and pestilence, and earthquakes, and volcanoes. Right now, there is a plague that is unlike any plague that the modern world has seen. It has already affected over 400 million people. Actually, as of this morning, that number could be well over 500 million are in total lockdown with it right now. It has spread to the majority of the traveling nations of the world already in 1 month. It's deadly. It is a bioweapon. It's man-made. It's not acting like a natural plague at all because it's not natural. It's part of its structure is from the HIV virus. But part of the DNA they have found in it is from snakes. How unclean. It got loose from a weapons lab in excuse me, I'm going to butcher this name, Wuhan, China, and where the weapons lab was. And so that whole province, that city and that whole province was the first ones on lockdown, and people are dying in droves. Don't believe the propaganda that it's only affecting a few. I watched a U.S. scientist who is part of the World Health Organization. He's a statistician, and his specialty is the spread of plagues and viruses of all sorts. He said, according to the numbers, the closer to the real numbers, close to 50,000 people a day are coming down with it, are being given that plague. 50,000 a day. And he's looking mostly just at China. He's not talking about the rest of the world. And a huge number are dying. In that one city, Wuhan, China, they have 6 mortuaries where they prepare for burial and cremation. All 6 are at maximum capacity every day. 100 bodies a day they can cremate. All 6 are doing maximum capacity and have been for 3 weeks now. The official number is only 600 people have died of it. Really? Or 626, something like that. That's a little over a day's worth of the people that are being cremated. That's ridiculous. I saw one video, a guy was sneaking it with his cell phone, and there was bodies stacked upon, on top of bodies inside a van, which was like their 911 van. Just stacked in there. And then people falling down all over the place. I saw one video where a policeman was sitting at his console working on a computer, and then he stops and he kind of slumps, and then this arm starts raising all on its own, and then he starts shaking, and he kind of looks at his arm, then all of a sudden his other arm, his back arches, he falls off the stool, falls on the ground, goes into great convulsions, and dies. He was at work, he didn't even know he had the virus. They designed this virus as a weapon, and it is what they call a stealth weapon. They designed it to be in you and able to be easily transferred to the next person from 4 to 14 days. Isn't that amazing? So you don't even know you have it. There's no signs. And by the 14th day, then that's it. It takes off. And then you're most likely you're going to die. There's some that make it through, but here's something else they're finding out, which is unnatural. It's not according to nature. If you survive the virus, you're still susceptible to get it again and go through the whole thing again. The virus does a weird thing. You have bad flu-like symptoms, then suddenly you start to get better. Everything seems just, I'm getting better, I'm getting out of it. And then within 2 days, it hits again. This time in either a heart attack or seizures that stop your heart, or you get pneumonia, which is the worst way to go. And then you suffer for a long time before you die. This is one of the plagues of the last days, and it's man-made. Look at the timing. Look out throughout history. God always judges nations that fall into great sin and depravity. He always does. Israel could not enter the promised land till the fullness of the Gentile nations' sins had come. The Lord let the cup of sins fill all the way up. Then he said, now you can go in and you're going to judge them. Because their sins have filled up and the land itself will vomit them out. People say how evil it was that settlers came in and drove the Indians out. Listen, the American Indians, almost all of them belonged to a blood cult. They were bloody. They also, all of them, believed very strongly in slavery and the murder of innocents. They were a blood cult. Everything was the worship of blood and demons. There were a few tribes that were peaceful. They were the ones that were picked on the most. Interesting thing is, those tribes, for the most part, got to stay in their ancestral lands. Why? God had mercy on them. Why? Because they hadn't fallen into the blood rituals and into the slavery and the evil things that they did. This happens to everybody. It's going to happen to us because America has fallen into great depravity and great murder of the innocent. 67 million children murdered that haven't even been born yet. China, why is China the first one to fall into this judgment? Because of the tens of thousands of Christians that they've murdered for their faith. They've murdered them because they refused to give up Jesus. So they're the first ones to be judged. Do I wish judgment on China? Oh, my heart breaks for China. I love the Chinese. I love those folks, and their history is rich, and their abilities are incredible. I brag about the Chinese. But when it comes to what the communists have turned them into, that breaks my heart, because the potential of that people is so wonderful, so great. And yet they're knocked down to, acting like the worst of pagans and heathens, because of their hatred for anything to do with God. Now, the average Chinese doesn't feel that way, but that's the government. But when a government leads you astray, what happens to the average people? They have to suffer. They have to suffer. That always happens. The rain of judgment falls on the righteous and the unrighteous because of a wicked leader. Prepare to meet God. Plague is about. And plague is spreading very, very, very fast. I watched one video, a man made a Christian brother, and started actually starting to get into the preaching the word. But a good friend of his child had gotten a bad flu, took the child to Children's Hospital in Florida. I watched the video. And the father was turned away, and the doctor said, we can't take him, there's too many people, just take him home. And the father said, hey, check my child out. Test him for that new virus going on. We can't do that. The test is $1,000 each. And the father then went to the news, the city news, told them about it. They made a big deal about it. The city council called the doctor and said, you better take that child right now. We're getting all kinds of heat from the people. This all happened in one day. So they called the father, bring your son in. So they brought the son in, they tested him for the new plague. He's got it. Then the father wanted to follow them into the ICU, and the doctor said, no, you can't come in. It's full of children. It's full of children with plague. You don't bring one plague person into an ICU unless everybody's got the same thing. Otherwise, you're going to infect all the people in the ICU that are sick and hurt and vulnerable. But they all have it. And guess what happened while this spreading was going on down in Florida? The Super Bowl. So they brought people from all over the country and some people from around the world to go to Florida while plague was already being spread. Oh, that's just great. What a way to spread it more efficiently. America will not go into lockdown like China. They won't. We won't. We won't. The Democrats would go nuts. The Democrats right now are trying to pass new bills as of yesterday in the House. I'm not political, those of you on YouTube, okay? I'm not a Republican or Democrat. I'm an independent. I vote both ways depending on the person. But listen, they're trying to pass bills right now that opens our borders. And that even if a person is full of plague, we cannot by law stop them from coming in. How insane is that? So is there any hope for America? Not in stopping the plague, no. No, there isn't. By the way, let me go on. Point number 2 I want to bring. And that is a prophecy of David Wilkerson. His vision of economic collapse. He had this many years ago. His vision of economic collapse is interesting because he says it started in China. The economic collapse started in China and Hong Kong. It hit the Chinese markets, and then it spread from there. It greatly affected Europe, and then South America and Mexico, and then 2 weeks later, the United States. And the whole world's economy collapsed. Guess what's happening right now? Yesterday, I watched a doctor that brought, again, statistics of trade and all the rest. Half of China now is on lockdown. You can't go to work. In 6 of their major exporting ports, in one of the ports, 35,000 sea land containers are exported every year. Well over 1,000 a day. They're all on shutdown. Nothing's going out. Nothing. Those cheap goods is what fills Harbor Freight. There's several car manufacturers right now in Detroit and Korea and in Japan that are shutting down. They're already beginning to shut down. Guess why? Chinese parts for the cars are not coming. What are you going to do? They got to shut the line down. They got to shut it down. How many parts for our aircraft are made in China? That's one of the big things President Trump has had a real bad time with in his Defense Department. They've said, wait a minute, we're finding all these chips made in China have already embedded in them programs to allow Chinese to be able to go in, they're called back doors, to be able to go in these back doors and be able to affect anything that chip is put in. Aircraft, ships, Navy submarines, whatever those chips are put in. And now Trump has ordered the military to start purging all those chips. Well, you know how many billions of chips those are? Where are we going to get new ones? Well, probably Korea and Japan, the biggest makers of chips other than China. But how about this? Korea and Japan are going into lockdown because the plague's there. And so I'm telling you, brethren, the economic collapse David Wilkerson warned us about is already begun. It is here. Remember this, it started in China, then Hong Kong, just like he said, and now it's coming to us. It's actually here. And it will be affecting us greatly in the next month. David Wilkerson's vision of the collapse of the economies, he said that for a time would be worse than hell. And then he said, for some strange reason, about 6 months later, it started to get easy again, and the economy seemed to bounce back some. Well, guess why? They're already talking about it. The new economy, when it comes back, you won't use a credit card anymore. It'll be a chip in your hand. They're already planning this. They already said this. And that chip, by the way, probably will have a vaccine in it, because they've already mentioned that. A slow-release vaccine that'll keep you safe. So guess what? To stay out of the plague and to have money again after nobody has any groceries for 6 months, how many people would be willing to take it? I urge you, do not take it, no matter what. That is the mark of the beast. Lord bless.